Hello, moviegoers, and welcome to another episode of Criticarter, a show where I turn you into a cinephile. Let's lay some ground rules here, alright?
Alright.
We're not going to talk about how Risa Fons got drunk at Comic-Con last year, okay?
Nothing to talk about there.
Right. We're not going to talk about how... We're not going to talk about Spider-Man 3, period. Just, okay? No jazz dancing, none of that, okay?
Right.
What we are going to talk about is The Amazing Spider-Man, directed by Mark Webb,
Written by James Vanderbilt,
Alvin Sargent,
Steve Kloves,
and starring Andrew Garfield,
Emil Stone,
Risa Fons,
Martin Sheen.
and Sally Field. After being bitten by a genetically engineered spider, Peter Parker finds that he's gained incredible powers, and finds he must quickly save the city from his former mentor, Dr. Curt Connors, after he's transformed into the evil lizard. Now, yes, you might think, oh, it's only been 5 years. Why are we doing this movie? Well, there are these things called property rights, and if Sony realized if they didn't have a movie in production, Marvel would get the rights to Spider-Man and maybe make something decent. But that didn't happen.
Just like Terminator 5.
But all hope is not lost. There were several good things about The Amazing Spider-Man. Number one, Gwen Stacy, an actual fleshed-out character. Okay, I did say we weren't going to talk about Spider-Man 3, didn't I?
Yep, broke your own rule.
Yeah, broke my rule. I had it seemed like she was just kind of an afterthought the first time around.
Right,
and
she was introduced in the third movie.
Right, she was introduced in the third movie, and really in like the second half of the third movie. Since there's no Mary Jane this time around, which, you know, Gwen Stacy did come first, after all, so...
This is true to the comics, the way they did it in the movies, whereas it makes sense because Mary Jane's Mary Jane, but it makes much more sense for him to run into her here and then have her be the first part of it.
Right. So Gwen Stacy, great job having her as an actual character. Also, they focused a lot on how, you know, Spider-Man is kind of quippy. You know, he makes jokes when he's in the middle of fights and things with, you know, the bad guys, even when the bad guys are giant lizard monsters.
I feel like that fits in more with Andrew Garfield than Tobey Maguire. He felt kind of weird to me and awkward. He doesn't seem like a quippy, funny guy to me. And Andrew Garfield, at least I can see the jokes that he had felt like they made sense for his personality. And
no, I don't know about you. You don't really see movies in 3D, right?
No, I didn't see this movie in 3D.
Okay.
No.
Well,
I refuse to do that. You remember the last review I said all 3D sucks.
Okay. Well, because this movie was actually shot in 3D, I felt a need to see it in 3D. And I gotta say, I enjoyed the 3D. I thought the 3D was really good. I thought it was, you know, it added depth where it needed to add depth. There wasn't a lot of jumping out of the screen kind of stuff.
I'll save my objection here for whenever we get to the bad things.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Carter,
okay,
because you may have seen this in the trailers. Now, there's a lot of scenes where he's swinging around and the camera seems really close to him. Did that translate into 3D? Because as I was watching it in 2D, it seemed really jumbled and I couldn't really tell what he was doing when he was web slinging, which I assumed was an effect that they used because of 3D.
No, I enjoyed the 3D web sling.
And you always knew exactly what he was doing when he was spinning around and the camera was flipping around him?
Yes, had no problem with any of that.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't see it.
Oh, that's another thing. I had a third rule in the beginning. Wasn't going to talk about the mechanical web shooters.
What's wrong with the mechanical web shooters?
That's why we're not going to talk about them. So, fight scenes. Really like the fight scenes. You know, thought they were very well done, very cinematic, well choreographed. And I would say the two great performances in The Amazing Spider-Man belong to Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben and Sally Field as Aunt May. I mean, in the first franchise, they were really great grounded performances from Cliff Robertson, may he rest in peace, and Rosemary Harris. And you'd need some really big star power to be able to at least match, if not overshadow that. And I thought that they were cast really well. And some problems that I had with...
Wait, what about my good stuff?
Oh, you got good stuff?
I have good stuff.
You got good stuff that I failed to mention. Go ahead.
Yes. We'll cover some other rockier areas with some of the performances, but I felt like Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield together were very natural and seemed like they were kind of into each other. Apparently they're dating in real life, so maybe that kind of makes sense. But I felt like their scenes together, whereas his scenes with other people really seemed to mesh well, and he had a really natural human
I'll give you that.
interaction.
I did enjoy the chemistry of Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone.
And to piggyback on what he said with the fight scenes, me being here because I am the resident comic book nerd, these fight scenes felt really true to the characters because in the comic books, the Lizard completely annihilates Spider-Man. He's his better in every single way. So the way they were fighting, it's not like they were just like, you know, squared off and started throwing haymakers at each other. Everything that Spider-Man was doing was relying on his speed and webbing, and it wasn't like they were just punching each other in the face like the Hulk movie or anything like that. That really felt good to me to see.
Well, since we're talking about being true to the comics, the Lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man, Curt Connors, is played by Risa Fons, who, as you may or may not know from his other roles, happens to be British. And he spoke in his normal voice. Some research that I did, and I know nitpicking and, you know, comic accuracy may be the end of enjoyment of films. The Lizard is supposed to be from Coral Gables, Florida.
Right, that's right.
But you said it didn't bother you
Not at
that
all.
he was British in this
Why
film.
does it matter? Why does it matter what accent he has? It's not like he was talking about he was from Great Britain or anything like that.
Well, if
Maybe
you're
he just
Brit-
had a British nanny or something like that. Like Catherine Zeta-Jones's kids. They got like a Nicaraguan nanny, so they...
And they speak with Hispanic
that was the idea, apparently, to make them speak with those accents. It's not that big of a plot hole for me.
How about the fact that their version of the Lizard looks like a certain DC villain?
That was
Does that bother you?
horrible. Yes, that was one of
Okay.
the first things that I had a problem with, was that he didn't have a snout. And it seems really silly, but he's right. He does look like Killer Croc from the Batman comic books. You might be familiar with him from the old Batman animated series. But yes, that not having that snout thing is really ridiculous. Why wouldn't you put that on there with a lizard character? He walks, talks, and moves like a lizard in every other way, and he has a scaly face, so it's not like he's emoting or anything like that, so why not give him the snout?
Well, see, that's the thing. When you say he talks like a lizard, I think that might have been like they want him to still have a human-esque face. So having to emote to the extent that he did, at least, and speak, with this kind of.
He was
mouth.
just a lizard that was screaming how he was going to kill Peter Parker. What do you have to emote about? Doesn't the tail do the job of what he needed to do?
There's a lot of product placement in this movie.
A lot.
Most of all, Bing. First of all, who uses Bing? Does anyone use Bing? Tell me in the comments if you use Bing, and because I really don't see that happening out there. There's a reason they have to advertise, I don't see Google advertising.
I do.
I don't see people say, "Oh, let me Bing that for you." No.
It
My
is
dad
awesome.
does.
Really?
Yeah, he loves Bing.
That's just because he can't figure out how to turn it off with the Google search.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of Sony laptop product placement.
Yeah,
It's basically Sony owns this movie. Sony put
Right.
everything they could in this movie. It was very noticeable.
Yeah. Peter Parker uses a Vio, which I'm surprised he has that old-timey camera instead of something digital made by Sony,
Yeah.
And he uses a Vio, and he searches on Bing when he's trying to figure out the connection that his parents have with Dr. Connors. Which brings me to my next point.
Wait, are we doing spoilers? We're not doing spoilers?
We're doing stuff that was in the trailers, which was a lot. There was a lot of stuff that the trailers told.
Okay. There are two problems that I have that were tiny spoilers.
Well,
Tiny.
we'll get to that, and then I'll cut them out if I feel a need
Okay.
to. Okay?
You won't.
Well, we'll see. First of all, this movie said that it was going to separate itself from the original franchise that Raimi did.
It was the untold story.
Yes, by being the untold story of what happened to Peter Parker's parents.
The hell does that mean?
I don't know.
The
I
untold
didn't-
story. That made me laugh out loud when I saw that trailer.
Well, no, just untold to the film audience,
Still a little white dude that got bit by a spider.
Yeah, but the thing is, in the first franchise, it's just he's living with his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben. Why? It doesn't really get addressed.
Especially because he's a 25-year-old man.
But at least he was supposed to be playing somebody closer to his own age.
Alright.
Okay?
Alright.
I also had a problem with how old Andrew Garfield especially looks compared to the fact that he's supposed to be playing a 16-year-old.
I disagree with this respectfully.
Really?
Yes, he certainly is not a 16-year-old, but he looks much
He was
more like a
27.
16-year-old than Tobey Maguire did, which we're not talking about. But with his contemporaries in the movie and how much older Martin Sheen looked to him, they seemed like younger. The kid that they got to play Flash Thompson, that was a huge difference to me because that kid looked like a modern 16-year-old. The dude that they had play Flash Thompson in the other movies, even though we're not supposed to be talking about it, that guy
No, we're
was
just not
damn
talking
near
about the jazz
45.
dancing. We can talk about
that guy was damn near 45. Go back and watch it. He looks ridiculous.
Okay. But yeah, so I didn't know what the untold story of Peter's parents was before I saw this movie. And I still don't know what the untold story of Peter's parents is, because they don't really say anything. There's just a scene in the prologue of Peter being a little kid, and somebody, I guess, has broken into their house, and then there's a lot of rushing around, and then they're dropping him off with Ben and May.
Let me jump in with a little bit of comic book insider information here. This was loosely based around Ultimate Spider-Man. Very loosely. There, a lot of the changes that you're seeing in this movie from the last franchise that are different from the original Spider-Man is stuff that was adapted from Ultimate Spider-Man. So that's why you're seeing a lot of key changes in those aspects. That's a mystery that'll unfold later on when we might see Venom.
Yeah, Sony has said that they want to take the Avengers route and have the Venom movie that's upcoming be part of the same universe that the new
And
the new Amazing Spider-Man is.
and those seeds were planted.
Alleged. Oh yes. Despite the 3 screenwriters that this film had, it's full of plot hole. The day after Uncle Ben is killed, everybody at school knows about it somehow. And Peter Parker, last time I checked, is not a popular kind of guy, right? And
Well, not this Peter Parker. This Peter Parker was a very good-looking guy that stuck up for kids being bullied, so he'd be pretty popular, you'd imagine.
well, yeah, but still, I mean,
And he's a skateboarder. What's up with that?
yeah, Peter Parker, huge nerd, right? That's not here. This
Right.
Peter Parker is not a huge nerd, This Peter Parker, especially like, yes, he's got, you know, that nugget of goodness inside of him, but then after he gets the powers, he turns into this big punk, you know, he's showing off all the time. And you think somebody would say, hey, it's funny how he's able to do all of these things, you know, that he's doing out in the open. The scene in the subway, he wakes up and sticks to the top of the subway car, and nobody pulls out their cell phones or their digital cameras or anything, even though he's, you know, running around and accidentally, you know, grabbing people's shirts off their bodies and
It's awesome.
taking the pole from the subway, and like, just because he can't control his powers yet, he's just throwing everybody around and accidentally fighting with guys, like...
Yeah. I don't know if it was good or bad, because I just realized that there wasn't really much of a physical change. You know, you've seen it in the other movies, and if you've read the comic books, he gets bit by the spider and he goes from a very meek, small guy into all of a sudden having muscles and having his super spider strength.
Right.
There wasn't a notable physical change between him before and after. Food for thought. Don't know if it's good or bad yet.
Yeah, back to the plot holes, which we kind of deviated from a little bit. He does have mechanical web shooters in this, as opposed to the organic ones the first franchise had. And they say that, you know, Oscorp, which does appear, although there's no explicit visual of Norman Osborn, he gets into Oscorp, which is where Dr. Connors works, and is able to somehow take these canisters of webbing, which he then adapts to use in his web shooters. How does that happen?
I don't think he took them. I think he ordered them.
So where does he get that kind of money? He's
know.
this lower middle
That's
class
the plot
kid.
hole,
Okay.
but I don't think he stole them from that factory that day.
Okay, well, one way or the other. He suddenly has a way to... Like, how does he make the costume? He just suddenly... There's all this equipment, and...
How does any superhero make their costume? We've never seen how... Tobey Maguire made his costume out of nowhere, too. That's not something they never explained.
It seemed a little better the first time around, to me, at least. I don't know.
You were younger.
Okay, I'll give you that. I was younger when I saw the first Spider-Man movie 10 years ago.
Fact.
10 years ago, I was younger than I am right now. You're absolutely right.
Are you done with your plot holes?
Yeah, we're done with plot holes.
Let me say my biggest problem with the movie. Now, this is a bit of a spoiler, but it doesn't actually take anything away. The biggest problem that I had when I left this movie, which I did really enjoy, I walked out of this movie cursing up a storm, because in this movie, at no point does Uncle Ben say, with great power, there's great responsibility.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there you go.
That, I know it's a little bit cheesy, and it's hard to put that in there, maybe those exact words, and he had a derivative of it.
Right, he got like 75% of the way there.
But not having that line in there, like, you might as well have just shot Stan Lee to death. Why do we even make this movie?
Why would you say that? The man's 89 years old.
And that's what you did by taking this away from him in a Spider-Man movie. It's the line he's synonymous with.
Right, yeah. If you make the original Spider-Man movie, if you make the first in a series, you need to have that line.
It's ridiculous to not have it in there. They broke every nerd's heart ever. How did that happen? How does that man die without saying those words to him? I thought maybe they were going to call back with the whole voicemail thing, but they didn't.
No.
I thought that after I saw him come back to it, I thought they were going to come back and end the movie.
Yeah, it seems like that could be the
words.
last line.
Yes,
but it's
exactly.
not.
But it's not. And
No.
I walked out of there cursing up a storm. My friends were cursing up a storm. It's just, how do you not have that in the movie? That's my biggest beef with the whole entire movie.
And this script has a lot of other problems besides it's just plot holes specifically. The pacing is really slow. Like, I feel the movie's only, I think, 2 hours 15, but it feels very long. And there's a lot of time when there's not a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of jokes apparently in this movie, and not a lot of them I thought were funny.
I laughed out loud quite a few times.
I mean, I was at the midnight show, and people all around me were just having a big old guffaw every 5 seconds, and I'm just wondering, really? That's a joke?
There were a couple jokes that missed the mark, but I thought the movie was pretty funny as opposed to him.
I think there was one, maybe two, that landed well, and everything else I could have done. Just didn't do anything for me. The mask comes off a disturbing amount. I thought.
That's derivative from Ultimate Spider-Man for sure.
Oh, really?
It's a running joke in Ultimate Spider-Man that he gets unmasked a shocking amount of times in the first few volumes of that series.
So the mask comes off a lot, but apparently, it all goes back to the Ultimates. There's a point in the film at which Peter Parker, who can stick to walls, has to be saved.
By someone.
Yes, someone else grabs his arm over the roof and grabs his arm as though he's not able to stick to walls for some reason.
That's part of the climax. That literally happens. It's ridiculous.
I have another problem with the climax that I actually think is worse than that. So the thing with Spider-Man, when you're reading it, and hopefully this should cross over into the movies, is that somehow, some way, he can swing. He swings on his webs from place to place.
Shoots him right up in the air.
Right. Just shoots the webs up, doesn't really think about it, and is always able to go. And you shouldn't, hopefully, if it's well written and, well shot in this case, you shouldn't be stopping to think, what are these attached to, right?
Right.
This movie goes out of its way to make that happen.
In a very shoehorned way.
Yeah, like there's no reason why this scene that we're discussing has to be in this movie. It was painful to watch. Like, it was the last... There were multiple times in this film that I considered getting up and walking out, and that almost pushed me over the edge.
That's understandable.
When that scene happened that we're discussing, it was just...
Everybody cringed. Everybody was gritting their teeth.
Ugh.
That has my last actual objection in this movie.
Okay.
Was, again, we can't spoil it, but as I said before, the Lizard is Spider-Man's better in every single way whenever they fight. And there's a point where Spider-Man gets handicapped in this movie and goes on to battle the Lizard, and I felt like it was a bit over the top to have him go in to fight someone that he can't beat in any way, shape, or form, and then have him be handicapped too. Like, he should have just thrown him off the top of a building. The Lizard should have won. It's ridiculous. If they're trying to hold true to the comics in any way, it's so silly to have him be handicapped and then still come out on top somehow.
And then just one or two last little things. You do see this in the trailer, so I have no problems talking about it. Peter tells Gwen that he's Spider-Man.
Yeah, he does.
But he does it before there's any connection between them. There's no relationship going on at the point when this happened.
I don't think you understand unrequited love.
But she has no reason to care about him yet.
It's really good looking.
This is a long...
You think Andrew Garfield is really good looking?
Yeah, they're both good looking.
But look, what you do, if you're somebody like Peter Parker, and you got a secret, you develop a strong emotional bond first. So you have that relationship for a period, just in case the horrifying secret about how you risk your life on a daily basis to save millions of people that live in New York City goes horribly wrong.
I don't think he appreciates the power of boobies.
Anyway.
What do you give this film, Carter?
Thank you. At the end of the day, Amazing Spider-Man gets 2.5 out of 5 allegedly teenage couples.
I give it 3 Batmans and a Robin.
You can't give it Batman and a Robin. That's not even the same company.
I'm gonna keep doing it.
Well, at least the next time... We'll get to that. You can check out my review last week of Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, up over by James. And in 2 weeks, we will be reviewing everybody's top film of 2012, The Dark Knight Rises. And that review will be linked up over there. Remember, 2 weeks, that's July 20th. As always, like and favorite the video if you enjoyed our wacky antics. And be sure to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr. It's Critic Carter in all 3 places. You can check out this guy at Dr. James Kelsky, DrJamesKelske. Thank you.
And my website with many other contributors, robotbestfriend.wordpress.com.
Fade to black.